Mhlekazi, Andile Mngxitama, it's great having you on the show. I know you're a very busy man, member of parliament. You're also busy growing the party, Umkhonto Wesizwe. And on top of that, you're also doing your PhD as well. But I appreciate you coming through. Thank you very much, Mhlekazi. Unjani?
Unjani kokulia.
That's right. We good out here. But I'm hoping for a great conversation today. Yes,
I'm happy to be here. I've checked some of your episodes. You're doing great. And people must subscribe and follow your work because it is a very relevant podcast that you're doing here.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's the first time meeting you in person, so we'd like to know about Andile. Where was he born? Who raised him up? And how did that shape your political philosophy? Lo Andile simaziyo ngoku, we'd really like to know. And obviously, igama lakho Andile, it's a Xhosa name, expand, Khamani, so I'd really like to know,
my origins are very linked to the whole apartheid project of migrant labor.
Yes.
My father was born and raised in Ngcobo.
Oh, Ngcobo, okay.
Yes, that's where we originate from.
Yes.
But then he came up to the Transvaal back then to work in the mines and ended up as a farm worker.
Okay.
And that's where we were born, myself and my brothers. And then in Potchefstroom.
Oh, in Potchefstroom?
Yes, Northwest.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
Today. So my whole formation from that point of view. Also, my mother's side, they were victims of forced removals.
Forced removals?
Yes, they were moved from town into the township. So the apartheid project of labor migration and forced removal, which are linked to the land question.
Yes.
In some ways linked me to what then happened in my own life.
Yes.
I discovered Steve Biko at high school as a result of now the late Pasi Kukushe, who was a former Robben Islander. He really grilled me in the idiom of black consciousness.
Yes.
And the first time when I read Steve Biko, I read what I like. I was like, but this is exactly what I've been thinking, but unable to articulate. So there was a very clear affinity between what I was reading and my, if you like, temperament.
Yes.
Some people come to politics through recruitment. Yes. Others are temperamentally resistors. So you can see even at school, I was always in trouble. Resisting authority.
We were resisting.
Yes. For instance, me and my brothers didn't want to comb our hair.
Yes.
We concocted the story that it was our cultural belief, and the principal had to contend with that. But generally, I've been contrarian, always going against the grain. Even on the farm, my first act of resistance was on the farm against a white fellow who was a very racist man.
Yes.
I want to write about him, Jan Serfontein.
Was he the farm owner?
No, he was the next door farmer.
Oh, okay.
But the school that we went to was his school.
Oh,
was on his land.
It was on his land.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
was it a multiracial school?
No.
Just only a
let me tell you, when I lived with my mom, and my mom and my dad divorced, but my mom was also on a farm, another farm where I started school.
Yes.
I walked, I think, about 10 kilometers every day to school. And one of the key dividing factors of apartheid was white kids will be in a bus which was half empty.
Half empty.
And they will pass me walking, and they were all being transported to town where they were schooling. And you can see they were happy inside there, throwing each other with the salami or whatever. And that's why in Vula, going to school, and my question was why I'm not in that bus as well. What is the difference? And so some kind of revolutionary anger was inculcated in me very young age. And I also saw how our people were treated on farms. The white man is God on farms, literal God. And he can take your life and there will be no consequences.
Just right there.
When I grew up, I know people who were shot. People that I know were killed by white farmers. I know that the same school, the farmer who owned that school, killed 3 black people at the go.
At a go.
Yeah. He just shot them. And nothing happened to him. He's still alive. He's still there. And as I say, I want to write about how he joined the ANC. This white man.
Was he part of the RVPL?
He was. In fact, you are right. He was the chairman of the AWB in Potchefstroom. Because remember, the Eugene Blanche is 45 kilometers away from Potchefstroom in Ventersdorp. So those white farmers, all they were members of the AWB. But they then joined the ANC.
Yes.
This one, Jan Serfontein, the guy who chased me with a knopkiri because I refused to call him Bas.
Yes.
This guy who owned that school. Nelson Mandela made him a member of parliament.
A member of parliament.
Not only that, after he then went and became the MEC in Northwest for Agriculture under the ANC.
Under the ANC.
So all those racist white farmers actually joined the ANC and massively removed our people forcefully from farms. Right now, the people that I grew up with in Potchefstroom live in a squatter camp because those white people just they pushed us out of land. But they were using the ANC. They were removing people from the office of the MEC of Agriculture in the Northwest under the ANC. And the ANC knew this. And because that guy is, Jan Serfontein is so wealthy, he was just,
he was part
silencing them with corruption, with money. One of the guys that I grew up on the farm with, joined the ANC.
Yes.
And he was a member of council.
Yeah.
When at one point our people were forcefully removed, dumped on the roadside.
Yes.
And I went there and tried to talk to him. He said to me, "Hey, Chief, you will not win this battle against white people. You must give up."
Yeah.
And I said, "No, so long as I'm breathing, I'll continue to fight."
Because now at that time, I'm sure they had partnered they were inside the ANC.
Yeah, no. He was a member of the ANC local councillor, this guy who I grew up with. And our people were being forcefully removed. And that is the time I've just left university. And I went there. People called me and I went there because I worked for a land NGO.
Yes.
The land issue was always following me. Also, in my master's degree, I actually did it on the land question.
On the land question.
I tried to run away from the land, but the land issue will keep following me. So that's basically, as I say, my father, part of a victim of that old apartheid system of forced migration.
Yes.
Migration labor, the farm situation where I got to understand white power, which was very palpable. You knew where you stood, and the violence of white people was also real.
It's an interesting one because I know my father was also born in a farm and my grandfather was a farm laborer, but they never, share the trauma side of growing up in a farm. And I can imagine because Jan, when growing up in the township, you'd hear former farm laborers when they talk to their kids, "Is a donor?" And that's the way it's a donor strong, so the trauma has always been there.
It's and one of the interesting thing about farm life is that these white farmers generally speak our languages. So this idea that if white people were to speak our languages, they will stop being racist, not true. the most racist, even in Mpumalanga, those who kill our people up to today. By the way, Mpumalanga is shocking. Now, as a member of parliament, we were there on a farm through this thing called the Parliamentary, outreach programs. Yes, oversight. We went to a farm. My brother, it's the trauma our people are going through, the gross violation of human rights. And the white farmers in our presence were driving around the area just to demonstrate the power they have over these people. Yes, that once you leave here, we are coming for them. And they were calling the police, the station commander was there with us. Yes. The white farmers were calling him, asking, what are we doing there? And he left the meeting to go answer this call. So white farmers on white farms,
yes,
they have total power. Complete power.
Total power.
They control the police, they control the local magistrates. They are friends and they drink together. And sometimes this magistrate and the prosecutor and the police are farmers themselves. So socially, they constitute a bloc.
So they're like a cartel.
Exactly. And then the life of our people is literal hell. Until we solve this problem.
Yes.
And that problem of our people on farms can never be solved outside of them getting land of their own. Because as a farm worker, you literally depend on the farmer. You depend on the farmer for your sustenance. You can't get visitors without permission, even when you die.
And the burial as well, I can imagine.
Exactly. They still refusing our people's burial rights.
Yeah.
I have a direct experience with one of our comrades in Mpumalanga.
Yes.
When he was not well, he told us that he must be buried. Comrade Sipoma Kombodi. He told us that he must be buried with his people who were buried in a farm where they were removed from.
Yes.
He challenged us. He said, when I go, I want to be buried with my people. And then we actually broke the law. On the day of the burial, we went in the morning, we dug the grave next to his people, and then we buried him there. 6 months later, the white farmers applied. Exactly. And the way the consumption happened, his bones were exposed, but so landless in life, landless in death. That is the condition of our people.
Interesting. I know your political philosophy stems from African unity, that Africans must unite. We have to unite, but you can see we are divided politically, economically, we're also divided. Historically as well, we were divided within the frontier wars, fighting the colonial wars, because we were fighting it through tribal lines. So how do you think we can promote African unity, especially politically? Do you think that's possible?
The only weapon we have is a dispossessed majority.
Yes.
The only real weapon we have is our numerical strength, which must be converted into political power.
Yes.
When white people wanted to make laws like the Land Act, where they reduced us to 13% of the land and they gave themselves, it was an act of parliament. They removed us from the common voters' roll. So they disenfranchised us and created themselves into a fake majority where they were able to make laws.
Under the Union of South Africa.
Exactly. Yeah. To make laws too. And they were so clear. They are in power. They're going to make laws that benefits them.
Yes.
At our expense. So we're excluded. So, of course, we were defeated in the battlefield, but they still needed to constitute that defeat and their victory against us through the act of parliament.
Yes.
So they needed to legalize.
Through legislation.
Exactly. And so if we want to reverse that process, we have to do exactly the same. And we're 90% of the population as black people.
At that time.
Up to today, we are the black majority. Even that parliament, in fact, if you can look at the black representation, we are probably more than 75% of that parliament. So we have the numbers on our side.
Yes.
And this is the weapon that we have. But these numbers are being fragmented because the enemy understands that black people cannot manifest this black power through their numerical strength. And that is why, I mean, Oppenheimer's gave...
Musi Maimane
and Bosa and Zanzi got 14 million rand.
14 million rand.
Why is white capital sponsoring black political parties to mushroom? It is to fracture this one big weapon we have, which is our numerical strength. It cannot coalesce into black power to basically control parliament. You know, like I make this example that, you know, in front of parliament there,
yes,
there's Louis Botha on his horse.
Louis Botha.
Tall, symbolic representation of white power. Do you know, behind him, not far, there's Nelson Mandela. Small, bronze, little thing there. Representing our position as black people. Of course, the acoustics of parliament, the maize which is being brought, these are all colonial constructs. We call each other honorable members.
Honorable members.
This is a colonial construct.
It's a colonial.
So we are still trapped and managing a white system. We will not be able to get our land back until we deal with these systematic divisions of the black vote.
It's quite interesting, Yani Andile, because after 1910, right, obviously in the Anglo-Boer War, you had Africans that were fighting alongside the Afrikaners, and you also had Africans that were fighting alongside the British, right? But I'm sure if there weren't Africans fighting alongside the Africans, the British would have wiped out the Afrikaners. But obviously, when it comes now with a political franchise, when abantu abamnyama want to be included, they are not included. But do you think that the African National Congress at that time was radical enough? Or was it an elitist arrangement? Because you see, for example, even though Walter Khubusane used to serve in the Cape Parliament, these were elites. John Langalibalele Dube, you know, I think even though Walter Khubusane was even funded by Cecil John Rose to start the first newspaper, Izwilabantu, if I'm not mistaken. But do you think that the African National Congress had a good program at that time?
The colonialists, when they arrive, they set up 3 institutions. The school,
yes,
which also the church and the prison.
Yes.
And normally same building will be the court, will be the school, will be the church.
In the same building?
In the same building.
Okay.
So the school is to create a Matkopoka.
Yes, yes.
And so Amatkopoka are those that is exactly. So you're being removed from Amakaba or the Kaba ethic, which is the original African idiom.
Yes.
So Amakkopoka get whitened, westernized.
Okay.
And these are the original coconuts. But as I say, the colonial system brings the police, brings the court, brings the school, brings the church. And these things operate to constitute the colonial project. So even our God is a God of the white man. So that's how you break the African spirit of resistance. Make them believe in our God. And these people become the layer that speaks for the Africans. But they generally speak from the colonial socialization point of view. So that clash 1913 when it happens and the ANC, because You see, Amabulu were very clear now. They were attacking everyone, including the middle classes. So they needed to protect themselves. It was for survival.
So they were not spared, the middle class now.
Yes. By apartheid, it was worse. So these are that's why when you listen to the ANC disputations or deputations to London, they were saying, we are good natives. Please intervene on our behalf. We are your subjects. This is their positionality. And sometimes I say, if you look 1906, Bambata is still fighting. But 1913, with the formation of the ANC, you have a party which is not about organizing resistance as Bambata did. It was about inclusion. Let us go and appeal to the conscience of the Queen, and we start from being, we are your subjects. Please intervene on our behalf.
And you see the picture there in London when they photographed.
These are the original coconuts. They were already spiritually defeated. They were whitened. And their idiom of liberation was already a white idiom.
Yes.
And they were not about, we kick these people out of our land.
Yes.
Let them go back to the sea where they came through. It was about integration. How are they going to accommodate us in their system? So that is one of the key criticisms that the original ANC has. But there has been a contestation inside the ANC from this liberal white acceptance.
Yes.
There always been moments of others within the ANC wanting a more black radical
the left
possibility. Yes. Of course, the ANC, when it started, it did not include white people. That's very interesting.
But was it only the elite that could join the ANC at that time when it started? Because it was a group of kings and monarchies as well. And
at the top, of course, of the leadership was the middle class. But they needed to mobilize the black majority.
The black majority.
But it was a project of the middle class. And their biggest problem was their exclusion. They wanted inclusion. And that is why 1994...
the same happens.
Exactly. It was the realization of that inclusion and the exclusion of the black majority. And the ANC 30 years in power has been the project of the exclusion of the black majority and inclusion and a creation of a layer of the black middle class. Steve Biko actually saw this and he said, if white people were clever, they'll realize that you could include 30% of the population into the white system, 70% excluded, and there will be no trouble.
What do you think informed the decision for the ANC in the Freedom Charter to say the land shall belong to those who work it, instead of saying the land shall belong to maybe the rightful owners? What do you think informed that?
It shows you.
It shows that when you explain it.
It is the same.
Even Notabo Mbeki was articulating that as well.
Mbeki is a clear, perfect example.
President Mbeki.
Yes, he's a perfect example of the whitening idiom of colonialism. Mbeki is when President Zuma, again, that is the contradiction inside the ANC, where President Zuma was calling in 2017, President Zuma in Parliament as a sitting president, called for black political parties to unite so that we can have the 2/3 majority to return land.
Yes.
Thabo Mbeki writes a 30-page document denouncing President Zuma's call for black unity. He says in this document, and it's available online, Google it, Mbeki on land expropriation without compensation. He says Zuma is wrong to call for black unity because the ANC is an unracial organization. It does not recognize blackness as a political force. In fact, it rejects it.
So it goes back, who are our people?
Exactly. That's what he says. In fact, that's what he says, that we as the ANC,
yes,
we're a non-racial party. We did not privilege blackness. It's black and white. That is why that Freedom Charter says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, both black and white. How could you say that in 1955 when black people were forced into 13% of the land? So this idiom, the investment of colonialists through their education system, through the Christian project, makes possible this compromise that you see in 1955, where Africans are unable to think of themselves as Africans, but have to include whiteness, the white brotherhood, into the idiom of liberation, and therefore surrendering our birthright to our land, giving it to colonialists. So the Constitution of South Africa, when it says we must buy back the land, is consistent with that compromise of the Freedom Charter. So the question that also must be asked, who wrote the Freedom Charter?
Who wrote the Freedom Charter? It was a combination.
They say ZK Matthews was there, but actually the drafters are white liberals in the ANC. So they put that clause, South Africa below, and Sobukwe and other Africanists, that is the point, the ANC had always Africanists. So you have this contestation always, the youth leaguers, which were led by Sobukwe and Da and so on. They, again, you see the revival of radical nationalism inside the ANC. And so those radical nationalists, when they saw the Freedom Charter, they said, no, this is a sellout project. We can't.
And that specific clause as well.
This was the biggest bone of contention. And of course, the land clause says the land shall be shared amongst those who work it.
Those who work it. And at that time, obviously, who owned it?
Exactly. I mean, one farmer claims that they work the land as well. Why would you make such a condition? The land must belong to those who owned it and were dispossessed by this colonial project. No liberation movement in the African continent has ever given land rights to colonialists, equal land rights to colonialists as the natives. But the ANC was able to accept that because, as I say, the colonial project created white thinking, socialized the white, the black middle classes through whiteness, and that is why they were able to it's like somebody make a crude example. If you take a rat and give it the education of cats, that rat imagine itself as a cat. And so when he sees a cat, he says, family. And then it ends up the lunch of a cat. So we are the lunch of cat, basically, cats.
It's an interesting, and I'm sure mission schools also played a huge role in this.
This is what I say.
Brainwashing.
They put up the church, they put up the school, and they put prison. So they break your spirit through church and school. Those who resist will go to jail.
It's an interesting one.
So our kings who resisted, that's why they cut their heads and demonstrate white power and the white God very visibly. Sometimes our kings, when they saw the power of whiteness, surrendered their sons into the white system as part of let them go learn the white man's ways. They'll be able to help us to fight this battle. Of course, it is a double-edged sword. Some radicals come from the same coconuts. Some coconuts refuse this coconut project, such as Sobukwe, for instance. Sobukwe and Biko are good examples of how they were socialized into the white idiom, but they rejected it.
They rejected it.
And they rejected it forcefully and in a very articulate manner. And they will not accept that we are whitened.
That's an interesting one. I'd like to go back historical to your political career as well. When you were part of Economic Freedom Fighters, and I think that was 2014 in the conference, why did you decline nomination in that conference? Because I see you even, for example, Okuwamba, so you were quite angry and you declined nomination. What was the reason behind declining nomination? Then after that, obviously, you got expelled and so on.
Yeah. No, conferences are a fraud. Political conferences are a fraud.
Is it?
It's a big, big fraud.
But it's a democratic process.
Not a democratic process whatsoever. In that conference, for instance, Julius, for some reason, decided to wear white and a long sleeve.
I can see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was running a choir. If he doesn't want a candidate, he keeps his hand down. If he wants a candidate, he raises his hand. And the whole conference does as he wishes.
Sure.
So he was conducting that conference as a choir from the front.
That was a signal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a very good comrade who I know have sacrificed, mortgaged his house to pay for some EFF programs.
Yes.
Julius left his hand down and that comrade fell.
How?
And for me, that was like, I can't be part of this. And so when my name was called a few times, I declined. But I also knew by declining, and I did say, President Julius, protect this movement.
Yes, I can hear you say.
But by saying that, I knew that I was as good as expelled.
When you declined, and after that you...
Yeah.
But did he accept you with the signals?
No, I did not get to the point where I declined nomination.
Oh, you declined nomination outright.
Yeah. So there was never a voting on my name that happened. I declined all the nominations, and I was nominated about 3 times. And conference, then people started a whole protesting and so on.
Yes.
But I knew I was out.
You just
do not contradict Julius Malema in public.
In public.
You don't do that. Maybe in a committee you can get away with it and so on. But in public, it's a totalitarian
so he runs it
political.
Like autocratically.
Yeah. And for to his credit, that's how he kept the movement together. But I think now we see that autocratic leadership style. It's having its own internal contradictions. Hemorrhaging of leadership to MK.
To MK, I guess.
So his autocratic style has, I think, reached its ceiling. And now there's negative consequences
that are
kicking in.
The chickens are coming home to roost.
Exactly. But as I say, I don't believe that these conferences are true reflection of democratic process. My leader, let me tell you, I mean, people can sit in a room and actually decide who must go to the conference.
And craft it out.
Yes, they cook.
So it's already choreographed.
Exactly. They can sit down and claim that there was a branch meeting, it nominated so and so, create a fake register and all that.
Yes.
These guys who have been in political parties are good at engineering that process. So the outcomes of conference reflect 2 things. Reflect a fraud in terms of that, but also reflect money. Money is also used to buy delegates.
So it's sought.
So I'm very happy that President Zuma says in MK we are not going to have this elective conference for considerable time. Let the party grow. Let the party throw up its natural leaders.
Yes.
And only perhaps then can we consider the possibility. If we were to do it now, Stellenbosch will throw so much money into MK to buy a layer of leadership who will be agents of Stellenbosch.
So you fear being infiltrated. But obviously, does he then handpick the leaders? Because we've seen quite a whole lot of resignations and in the top structure of the MK. So do you think that system,
leadership,
that system works where it's central to him?
Absolutely. This is what is keeping the organization together. So this is what brings about hegemony, and this is what we need
at the moment.
At the moment.
So at its foundational phase, you need a more central control.
You have to, because Umkhonto weSizwe is the biggest threat to established interests.
Yes.
And so you can imagine the kind of infiltrations that will be there, the kind of destabilization that can be there, the money that's going to be thrown into the movement. So you need to create this environment where you protect the movement. So President Zuma provides this. So this leadership structure right now and practice is the best form to protect the movement against infiltration and against being destroyed by money and the enemy of revolution.
With Umkhonto weSizwe, I think you had a giraffe view, because when you formed Black Land First, you were already supporting Jacob Zuma. Did you know, as it was brewing, that President Zuma will start a political party? Or were you also looking for an alternative at that specific time? Or just aligning with him?
My own political practice is to gravitate towards
the left.
And a moment that seem to bring together forces that can have an impact. Yes. That is why I joined the EFF at the beginning, because I saw at that moment that all the revolutionary young people who were joining there, this thing had the real potential to become a revolutionary movement. So let us go and help it.
Yes.
President Zuma, we support him at the moment when imperialism and white capital in South Africa is agitating for his removal. And we read the international scenario. Brazil was a very good example where imperialism had removed a progressive president.
Yes.
And it was understanding the BRICS process and how they're breaking it up. And exactly the same system of organizing civil society, opposition parties, and so on, was then brought into South Africa.
Yes.
To sponsor that whole Zuma Must Go campaign. It was sponsored by imperialism, or sponsored by Stellenbosch. The biggest interests that were against President Zuma are those that hold our economy and land. President Zuma was punished precisely for calling for radical economic transformation, for saying land expropriation must happen. At that moment, white capital organized this Zuma Must Go campaign, which was led, of course, by, amongst other, the media. Julius Malema was in London. You know, I always make that example that he was in London and he met now the late Lord Robert Renwick, who is the biggest representative of the British imperialist project in Southern Africa. And after...
He was an ambassador.
Yes, he was an ambassador. He negotiated Lancaster in Zimbabwe. He went to Namibia. And even South Africa. He, by the way...
was extremely powerful.
Yeah, exactly. He says, there's a clip on YouTube. Lord Robin Renwick, you can check him. He says he's the one who converted Nelson Mandela away from nationalization. He says he convinced Nelson Mandela to drop that nationalization project.
And more pro-capital.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he is the author of the coalition politics in South Africa. After they went to see him in London, in that Chatham House discussion, then they come back and they give the...
Rob Hertzog was also present.
Rob Hertzog, by the way, now we know him. When we see the picture, we realize it is Rob Hertzog who was facilitating that whole project.
I see the picture.
Exactly. I mean, Rob Hertzog, we need a special, just a podcast on Rob Hertzog because he is the activist capitalist.
Yes.
He is an operator. And he has a big influence in terms of how South African politics are developing. Even this national government of national unity, it is partly his thinking. Because he's been talking about how you undermine radical transformation. You must keep EFF out, MK out, make sure that you tame the ANC. So just like Robin Renwick,
yes,
Rob Hersov is a father of coalition politics. And as we say, after they met Robin Renwick in London, they came back in South Africa and they called the DA the better devil. And they gave the Democratic Alliance political power in some of the key metros.
On the metros, I remember.
Exactly. And so normalizing, therefore, the idea that the DA, so the GNU idea originates from Julius Malema. When he gives political power to the Democratic Alliance.
With the metros.
Exactly. He was saying that you can, in fact, it is politically feasible and acceptable to go into political alliance with the Democratic Alliance.
But wasn't that to weaken the African National Congress at the time?
You see, my brother.
Because, I mean, they're fighting for the same constituency.
But you see, if that is the weakening of the ANC, it is weakening it to the left. If me and you as brothers are having a fight, I can't join hands with our common enemy to defeat you and then say that the common enemy is a better devil and we have defeated you. Yes. Defeating the ANC by strengthening the enemy is not a strategic progress. It is strengthening the wide hand. Right now, the Democratic Alliance is in government. The Democratic Alliance runs this government, by the way. It is Helen Zille who's the actual president of this nation, not the Ramaphosa. The whole policy shift to the right of the GNU shows that the Democratic Alliance ideological project is actually won. So who are the originators of normalizing working with the Democratic Alliance?
So,
for me, you can't go into alliance with land thieves against any black person. You just it is politically and ideologically not permissible to enter into any tactical alliance with the enemy. The enemy must be defeated. We must agitate and organize to defeat the enemy. Never use it as a crutch to fight. Because the contradictions amongst us, including the ANC, are secondary contradictions. They are not the primary contradictions. Because even if you defeat the ANC, as we should, we still have to deal with the primary contradictions. Defeating the ANC is not going to return land. We must still get to defeat the white enemy. So when you go into a tactical alliance with the white enemy, strengthening it, you are taking the struggle for liberation many, many years backwards.
Yes. But I'm also curious to find out with President Jacob Zuma having dual membership, what is the strategy behind that? Does he want to garner still support from the African National Congress? Why is he still maintaining dual membership?
President Zuma is trained by the Russians
in KGB.
Exactly. So he understands something called dialectics.
Okay.
I have called this political program a parallel power praxis.
Yes.
So let's take the example when he was in power. The SABC, which was supposed to be a state broadcaster, ideologically was against him. And he found another way.
Even when Chauti was in charge of the SABC at that time.
Well, but the journalists were following the white agenda. So President Zuma supported the establishment of the ANN7.
Yeah, ANN7.
You see,
which was Gupta funded.
Exactly. But that is exactly that contradiction that he is using to find a path out of this problem of the captured SABC, you needed to find a voice that's going to represent radical economic transformation in the battle of ideas. And then he supports that. Imperialism was hegemonic. He supports the BRICS process to break this hegemony of imperialism. The same kind of thinking in many other spheres of his political praxis, you'll find that he always finds another way to find a path.
Alternatives.
To make, yes. So, but sometimes it looks contradictory. Just like now he says, I'm a member of the ANC, but I'm going to vote for Mkhonto Wesizwe. Now, people think that is a contradiction. No, it's not a contradiction. He moves with the legitimacy of the ANC to form a force which must defeat the ANC so that we go back to the revolutionary path. Right? And in KwaZulu-Natal is a good example which shows us that the ANC was reduced severely. Right now, the ANC is governing with a
democratic alliance. But when are you taking power back in KZN? I hear there are some rumors that you are talking behind the scenes with the African National Congress to take back.
I'm not sure if the ANC will ever give us power there. We might have to work with other smaller parties to see to what extent we can get the majority. Because it's really unfair that a party that gets 45% of the vote is not in power.
Yeah, it's not in power.
It's just unfair. It's unjust. It's unacceptable.
Yes.
Mkhonto Wesizwe must rule KwaZulu-Natal because that is the popular vote. Our people gave the vote to Mkhonto Wesizwe. So these parties who are now running that province are doing this illegitimately. So the legitimate power must take power, and that is Mkhonto Wesizwe.
How do you feel about the members that are coming from the economic freedom fighters like Floyd Shivambo, who is now your Secretary General, Nom Kweban and Andile Mngxitama? How do you feel when they get to Mkhonto Wesizwe and then they are given, higher position, like parachuted immediately?
These comrades are very high profiles.
Yes.
And they bring a lot of experience.
Yes.
They bring a lot of capability to contribute towards building Mkhonto Wesizwe.
Yes.
It's a big loss for the EFF. It is a real, I feel for Julius, and you can see even his face.
Yeah.
He understands the gravity of losing such seasoned cadres from his organization. It's a big gain for Mkhonto Wesizwe. Floyd is a proper or socialized political leader. Losing him to Mkhonto Wesizwe is a big blow. Similarly, the gravitas of Advocate Mkhwebane. Andile Mngxitama is, one of the visible faces in our political scene. So it's you can only feel for them.
You can only feel for them.
And hope that they can see the trajectory, the historical trajectory is and momentum is towards Mkhonto Wesizwe. And so EFF must seriously consider joining hands with Mkhonto Wesizwe and strengthening the left. And we are able to build a really big revolutionary party which can unite the black radical forces, because that's what we need.
Yes.
Only when we have such unity can we get proper results. And I'm very happy with the ATM's consistent support. Yes, Zungula is a very matured, seasoned, principled, hardworking leader, very capable. And you see the dynamic between ATM and MK is a very mutually supportive, even in Parliament. And there are other...
the Progressive Caucus as well.
Yes, the Progressive Caucus... So the
Malem has just declared you enemy number one. I don't know how that Progressive Caucus is gonna work.
Yeah, but that's an ideological mistake.
Yes.
You can't declare a black political force enemy number one.
Again,
it goes back to that misnomer that was engineered in London, where you call the DA the better devil.
The better devil.
It's an ideological mistake that shows that ideologically there's no consistency. And you are available to all kinds of agendas, including right-wing agendas.
So you still think that Malema is being controlled by some right-wing forces?
Well, he doesn't have to be controlled by them. But his lack of consistent, clear ideological position leads to serious strategic mishaps, such as now declaring Umkhonto weSizwe the enemy number one. How can you do that? Defeating Umkhonto weSizwe. Let's say you defeat Umkhonto weSizwe. How does that advance the historical question of returning land and defeating the enemy?
But I think you're targeting the same market. That's also the other thing, because the constituents...
You can say we are opponents.
You are political opponents.
But we can't be political opponents because ideologically, you are going to struggle to find the difference between Umkhonto weSizwe and the EFF. Ideologically, in terms of our position on the Reserve Bank, on land question, on the economy,
yes,
we are on the same side. In fact, it doesn't make sense that you have Umkhonto weSizwe and EFF as a separate parties. They must just come and join their natural home, which is Umkhonto weSizwe.
So when Andile in MK on the ground, what is your role except Parliament? Do you play more of an educational role with the branches? What is your main role, Umkhonto weSizwe, in building the organization?
I'm a ground force, and a lot of the branches invite me to give political education classes. So I'm seen as somebody who is able to articulate and educate our members on the stance, the ideology of Umkhonto weSizwe. And I do that with great humility. And I really appreciate that there's that recognition that I can make that contribution.
Yes.
And so the branches invite me all the time, and I get clearance from national leadership.
Yes,
and we do that work. Because as Thomas Sankara teaches us that a soldier without political education is a potential criminal. We need to inculcate ideological clarity in our members so that they don't become political thugs.
No, okay.
Because if they're not politically educated...
the conscious crime.
Yes. If they're not politically educated, if there's no ideological clarity, political power can then be used, and that influence, even at local level, to generate a criminal kind of intent. So it becomes a gangster type thing without politics. So at this very formative time, and we have a very clear and highly ideological constitution in Umkhonto weSizwe. It explains so much. And I take some things from the constitution when I do these talks and go through them and explain their origins and what does it mean for Umkhonto weSizwe. And that's what we must do. All members of Umkhonto weSizwe have to get involved in political education.
But do you think members are joining because of the political philosophy or the party doctrine, or they're joining the specific leader?
Well, they're joining the specific leader, but the specific leader has a doctrine. Just like back then, people followed Jesus. Jesus had a clear teachings. If you follow me, these are the things that I believe in. And so we have to make sure that our members understand, when you follow President Zuma, what does that mean? In this way, we can build a movement that can live for a very long time and can achieve the things that President Zuma stands for as a movement, to make sure that his vision of change is realized.
How is he as a leader with leading Umkhonto weSizwe?
President Zuma is a very agreeable person. He's very patient. He's very loving. He's very forgiving. You know, I mean, some people who fight with him. Then you see how he embraces them. I mean, I'm incapable of that kind of magnanimity.
So internally, there is democracy and contestation of ideas.
There is, and he listens. He's very patient, as I say. He listens, and ideas are circulating. I mean, in our national meetings, people will talk. Everybody will talk, and he will not say anything. He will just be there and listening, and he'll make his input at the end. If you're making some interesting points, he will ask that you get even more time so that you clarify your ideas. Yes, President Zuma is an ideas person. This is the thing that I didn't know until I got to meet him.
Yes,
and we
so
spent we spent almost the whole night just talking politics. His idea of politics is a scientific idea.
Yes.
You know, for instance, he's able to explain why Mozambique and Samora Machel failed in their fight against Renamo, and why Angola succeeded, including coming back to Quinto Conevali, where they defeated the apartheid system. He shows it as part of a scientific political analysis of the political leaders. And he explained how the Angolans were more scientific. That is why they got the success they got. And why Mozambique, because they were not as scientific in their analysis of the enemy and his tactics and his strategies. That's why Samora Machel ended up losing even his own life. So he has got a scientific approach to politics.
It's an interesting one, Andile Samora, because he ended up signing the Inkomati Accord with the apartheid government. And President Zuma was there at that time. Mkhonto was.
Yes. Samora was under extreme pressure.
Yes.
Because of the tactical mistake that he was making in the interface with the apartheid project.
Yes.
But you see that Angola had a different approach.
MPLA.
And they had a much better success. But President Zuma explains this in terms of the science of politics, of how both nations, what they adopted and what results will come. So President Zuma, when he makes a move here, he's already thinking about the consequences. Likely consequences in the long term. He is a political genius.
A brilliant strategist.
I mean, and just listening to his teachings and analysis of situations is, it's a beautiful experience.
So you don't think that Umkhonto weSizwe will be a dynasty party, a family organization whereby someone will be anointed to lead? Do you think it will be a democratic force that can...
We are a revolutionary force. We're not the democratic what. We're a revolutionary force, and to the extent that democracy sustains a revolutionary project, it will be engaged with. But if President Zuma give us direction about what the future of the party should look like, and I do think that he must.
Do you think he must?
I think he must. I think he must, because that would circumvent...
But won't that increased patronage within the party?
No.
If everything is centralized through him.
You're building a revolutionary party. Even Lenin talks about democratic centralism and centralized power. In fact, Stalin is an outcome of how Lenin had to centralize power to create a revolutionary movement. If you don't do that, you will be crushed, you'll be defeated.
Yes.
You have to organize a centralized power which is able to respond as one to situations. And you need a group of professional revolutionaries around you who are able to carry out that project. And President Zuma, I think, has created at this point exactly that. If you look at the quality of the national leadership of Umkhonto weSizwe, it's some of the most outstanding people in their own areas of specialization or education and so on. But all coalesce around his vision.
Yes.
And so that is why centralism is so critical, particularly at this point of the formation of the movement. We can't allow rocking the boat and all that. This movement is perhaps
still in its infancy.
It's in infancy, and it is our best shot once more to try to address the problems that we did not create. The problems that started in 1652 with the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck right here in Cape Town.
In the Cape. It's an interesting one. But when you look at, we can talk about geopolitics in the geopolitical space. What do you think about America saying to BRICS countries, if they neglect the dollar and stop using the dollar as the reserve currency, then obviously they'll hit 100% tariffs on all our product. There's also the AGOA agreement we might also lose because obviously we're exporting products and we're not paying for any tariffs in the American market. So what do you think of Donald Trump's stances on that? Especially now he's taking over, and I think,
No, Donald still lives in the world that has passed.
Yes.
He's not going to be able to hold the hand of history.
Okay.
These developments are irreversible. The momentum is towards BRICS. And you see, even those oil-producing countries in the Gulf areas are joining the BRICS process. So he's going to hold his dollar without value.
Yeah.
And he can't. Of course, imperialist wars are fought on the basis of the economic interests. But even there, he can't start a war against China and Russia and the whole world. So Donald Trump is in a very weakened position. So these are empty threats, quite frankly. He's still harping back to the time when America was the world policeman.
Yeah.
That time is past. We are in a complete new era where, as I said, the momentum is towards BRICS. The momentum is towards the global south, including Russia and China. And the future is really, really bright for us in the global south. When our economies get to operate as one, America will be isolated. So we are the ones who are going to start sanctions against America.
Against America. So you think South Africa should also use their currency in trading globally and not use the dollar? Because this started in 1944 when the World War II was coming to an end, and they formulated the dollar as the reserve currency because the Allies won. So you think that we must find an alternative here in Africa in trading with a different currency? What are you saying? What are you?
We must strengthen the BRICS process, and the BRICS leaders must have the balls, basically, the courage to go ahead with this process of because some of them, I think, they're getting a bit of cold feet from Donald Trump's threats.
Yes.
We need that financial architecture which is not controlled by Americans. Because if we get that right, we will not suffer from American sanctions. We will be insulated from those threats and actual capacity of America to attack any economy.
Yes.
And the world would be a better place for all of us. So the BRICS process is the answer to imperialism today. And they must not waste time. They must move with speed to make sure that we change the global economic structures and we bring power to nations, and national sovereignty can be realized through this liberated global economic system.
Yes, no, it's a really interesting one. So, what's your solution with the war in Ukraine, Russia in Ukraine? What is your solution to that?
That is the war of
because it's edging closer to World War III now. We might have a nuclear conflict that side. So, what is your?
Our position has always been to say we stand with Russia. This war is not Ukraine, Russia. It is Russia against the West.
But obviously, it wasn't only Russia that assisted South Africa. It was the Soviet Union, which Russia and Ukraine were part of. That's why I
yeah, but
you know,
but
that,
Ukraine
yes,
has chosen the
understand.
side of
Yes,
imperialism.
No, I understand that, but Ukraine was also part
Of
liberating.
Of course, as
Because it
part
was
of
part
the,
of the
of the
Soviet
Russia,
Union.
yes, yes, a Soviet.
Yes.
But the Soviet bloc is represented by Putin right now. The you know,
Yes.
if Ukraine was not part of the Soviet bloc, it would not have provided us with that support. It was a centralized political decision to support us that manifested into that space being where we got support as well.
Yes.
Without Moscow saying so, it will not have happened. So it was a Moscow decision to support us, and we stand with Moscow as it is. We can't allow Ukraine to be annexed and become a little nuisance control space of the West to threaten the security of Russia. It is our turn to stand with Russia and to say that the West get out of Ukraine, because that war is a war of imperialism.
So you think Donald Trump, by stopping the funding, he will then, allow the Ukrainians to go back to the negotiation table with the Russians?
Well, it's a tactical possibility, and we hope that Donald Trump comes through on that one. And because if he does, it will certainly silence the guns and that dancer of Ukraine.
Zelensky, the comedian.
Yeah, that comedian will stop the comedy and negotiate a proper peace deal.
Yes. So how is Parliament, and which committee are you serving in Parliament, and what changes have you made in that committee that you are serving in Parliament?
I serve on the land and rural development.
Yes.
And also on agriculture.
Oh, also agriculture as well.
One of the key things that we have intervened now is on the food poisoning situation.
Oh, okay.
We confronted the Minister of Agriculture, John Steisen.
Oh, John Steisen.
Yeah. And we said, look, our children are dying.
Yes.
And it is the state's responsibility to protect us. So we ask, what kind of restitution is being given to the families of those who have lost,
were affected?
And he has promised to take the matter to the interministerial committee to raise it there, and then he'll come back and report. And so we hope that through that intervention, he did indeed have conversation with other ministers to say there's a call for reparations. And that call was made by us directly. And so we will see when Parliament opens how far that matter has gone. Another big achievement is we have been agitating for a feasibility study.
Yes.
Emakhathini in KwaZulu-Natal.
Okay.
This area has got so much potential. You already have over 3,000 sugarcane growers, small-scale sugarcane growers.
They're subsistent.
Yes. But the thing is, they need to take their sugarcane to the mill, which is 240 kilometers away.
All right.
So it means that they can't realize any profits because all the money is spent through this long transportation. Yes. So we have agitated for the establishment of a mill in Emakhathini. And in fact, the minister has now released or approved the money to get a feasibility study to make sure that this mill is established. Okay. I'm very, very pleased about that. And it is out of our agitation since we arrived in Parliament to say the Emakhathini a mill must be established, release the money for a feasibility study. And as we speak, the minister, even in Parliament, we raised the issue, he responded to it, and he has said that a service provider has now been engaged to make sure that the feasibility study is started.
So they'll set up the mill, and so that
hopefully the feasibility study will hopefully come to that conclusion. And we can't see it any other way.
And who does the feasibility study? Is it a private company? Or?
Yes. Treasury has decided to employ some private entity. Yes. But we wanted the South African SAFTA grain growers association
Yes.
to do that because it's a black-owned entity and there's the capacity, but they've decided to give the study to some other private entity. It's fine. Let them do the study appropriately, properly,
Yes.
and we'll see the results. And I believe that the results will show because you can't be traveling 240 kilometers
Yes, I can
to
imagine.
go to a meal.
I can imagine. And the progressive caucus, do you think it's going to last or there will be?
There's turbulences.
Yes.
But I think that sense will prevail.
Yes.
And the progressive caucus will chart the way forward. Because these elections, the last elections,
Yes.
throw out two possibilities. One, the convergence of the right wing under the so-called government of national unity.
Yes.
And on the other hand, the convergence of the left forces under the progressive caucus. We have ideological responsibility to make sure that the progressive caucus succeeds. So we must do everything that we can. And I'm very glad that Umkhonto weSizwe is not responding to any of the insults or attacks that you see from social media. Yes.
So it's an instruction coming from Nkandla, ningaphenduli.
No, it's not an instruction. It's the character of
It's
the
a character of the party.
coming from President Zuma. President Zuma will not insult you back. He will not. So we are following that posture, and we hope that sense will prevail and our brothers will realize that we belong together more than we have to fight each other.
Yes. So you see Umkhonto weSizwe growing?
It is it's growing very fast.
Yes, it is.
And we are now breaking into other provinces where it wasn't so well represented before. These
especially here in the Western Cape, I guess.
Yes. Even here, there's nice energy and momentum. There's these by-elections which are happening this week in Tabazimbi, in Limpopo. I think we must look with great interest what they're going to suggest, because I think Umkhonto weSizwe is going to make a big impact in Limpopo. Now showing that we are able to grow in other provinces.
Yes. Who's the national organizer now? Because Floyd moved from national organizer to secretary general. Who has taken that position?
There's a comrade that I think has been seconded there, but I must just check again.
Oh, okay. Would you like
changes are making?
Would you like to be the national organizer and be on the ground, or you find in Parliament?
I'm very happy to be in Parliament.
Yes. And why is there that divide? Like, if you are an official, you don't go to Parliament.
I think it's just a question of making sure that there's no straddling of responsibilities.
Oh, okay, I see.
Our movement, in fact, is Joan Lela, the
organizer.
You see, President Zuma has this idea that part of the problem with the state was that you have ministers who are also leaders in a political party.
Okay.
So if a minister was also a leader in a political party, who calls them to account?
Yes.
Looks who overs exactly. There's no oversight. So the party must be able to delegate your responsibility there in Parliament and then check whether you are doing what is expected. So that division is for accountability. And I think it's a very proper way of doing things. But we have representation in the High Command through the Deputy President of the party, Dr. Hlophe.
Dr. Shop.
Yes.
It would be great if he comes through as well.
I will definitely ask him to grace.
He's also got a book out, so we can also do a book review as well.
Yes. No. A very sharp person, and I'm very privileged to be led by him.
Yes.
Very patient, just like President Zuma. Very loving, very understanding.
Yes.
Very democratic, very engaging. We are blessed to have and very sharp as well. So we are very blessed to have him as the leader of parliament.
No, that's great. That's great, Andile. So last but not least, are you optimistic about the future of South Africa?
I am. I believe that Umkhonto we Sizwe presents a real possibility. There was a time I was losing hope in our politics.
Yes.
I think that we have a responsibility to grow Umkhonto we Sizwe. We have to use it as the foundation to unite all the progressive parties. We really have to create a revolutionary majority. Because only political power is going to solve our problems. And we will not get political power if we are so divided. Umkhonto we Sizwe provides an energy point around which we can organize. All revolutionary parties must come and join Umkhonto we Sizwe. Abo PAC, Abo Azabo, all of them.
You're calling them all. The SACP as well.
The SACP must come through. Must come home. We must all go to Ngandla and have a nice meeting with Ubaba and say, we are building a revolutionary movement to finally liberate our people. Because we can't be controlled by less than 10% of the population. They own all the wealth. Look at the JSE and black representation.
But don't you think, Andile, when it comes to the JSE, black people also indirectly own shares through the pension fund? I mean, the pension fund
I like that liberal
close to 30%
of the JSE.
Yeah. I mean, the largest investor, ShopRite, is the pension fund.
Exactly.
Right? Who's building these buildings? It's the pension fund. That's workers' money. So I think we also need to realize, what do we own? Because if we don't own anything, I want to see now, then we'll be making a mistake.
No, it is true that institutional
I understand it's still
investment, but you are not going to call my pension similar to Johan Rupert's control of the economy. My pension is a collective contribution. Of course, it must be used properly.
Yes.
It must be invested in the productive sectors of the economy, but it does not make our individual pensioners capitalists. I think it's conceptually wrong to claim that pension money makes you a capitalist, because we're talking about individual capitalists here versus the collective pot to which we contribute our pensions. Of course, that money must be invested in, as I say, the productive part of the economy, and in this way contribute to part of the economic transformation.
Yeah, because if you look at like most of the black unions that are there, they still reinvest that money to white businesses.
Exactly.
It's far more different maybe with AfriForum that would build schools. And do you get?
No, there is a problem. These unions, for instance, they set up those private arms.
The investment
arms, yes.
NUMSA has an investment arm, that Nehao investment arm. Look at the assets that are under there.
Yeah, but the workers don't benefit. You're creating a layer of a class within the labor movement, which then operates almost like a layer of capitalists, whilst excluding still the
growth in socialism.
Exactly. So there's a need to talk about how that resource is utilized for economic transformation, but certainly it does not create any individual wealth for pensioners who are contributing there. I think conceptually we must keep a separation. Private capital, Stellenbosch, is different from a pension money of a collective contribution.
Yeah, no, we'll have another session on that. But thank you very much, Andile Mngxitama. We had a great discussion, and I'm wishing you all the best with your political endeavors. Now with MK as well, and you're soon gonna become a doctor. We're also looking at you, Glondoleyo as well. But thank you very much, Yabulela. I'm a huge fan. But
thank you, my brother. Yabulela are cool.
Thank you very much. Of course.
Sure.